In economic news, Donald Trump has a new tariff boner. I think it's because of the escalating stuff with Epstein. There are, of course, as I mentioned, not just the Epstein situation room happening, but there was an expose done by the New York Times with with that highlighted Jeffrey Epstein's apartment, which is apparently still listed for sale in New York City. By the way, shortly after that, literally like a few hours after that story dropped, Donald Trump was seen walking on top of the roof of the White House. And when asked by a reporter, they said he just wanted to be outside and go for a walk. I think part of this tariff stuff is closely related to Jeffrey Epstein, or at least trying to distract from it. And if it's not, I'm going to hammer this propaganda point because I want to create some proprietary propaganda. There are, of course, other actual reasons as to why Donald Trump has these targeted tariffs. We're going to talk about Brazil and we're going to talk about India. Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, the 9-time COVID haver, who's one of Donald Trump's best friend, was recently sentenced to, I think, house arrest. So Donald Trump is putting tariffs on them, or claims he's putting tariffs on them. He's also jacking up the tariff on India for buying oil from Russia and quote unquote fueling their war machine. We are going to start with Brazil. I think the Brazil one is interesting because this is going to have a direct impact on the American consumer that I don't believe people are ready for. Brazil's economy ready to ride out Trump's 50% tariff. This is courtesy of Reuters. Brazilian goods imported by the United States will soon carry one of the highest tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump, but that will not likely derail Latin America's largest economy due to ample exemptions and stronger trade ties with China. The lower stakes for the Brazilian economy gives President Lula more room to stand his ground against Trump than most Western leaders after calling him an unwanted global emperor and comparing his tariffs to blackmail. Remember, this is the socialist icon himself, Luiz Lula da Silva. Unlike Mexico and Canada, which sells about 3/4 of their exports to the United States, Americans buy just 12% of Brazilian exports. By comparison, Brazil's exports to China have doubled in value over the past decade, now accounting for 28% of the country's global shipment. After exemptions laid out in Trump's executive order last week, including on aircraft, energy, and orange juice, the tariff taking effect on Wednesday will apply to just under 36% of Brazilian exports to the United States by value. Many of those affected exports are commodities such as beef and coffee, which should find alternative markets at modest discounts, according to economists. China has opened up imports to like 183 different Brazilian coffee companies or something, or there's 183 new permits given by China in regards to those exports. Long story short, these tariffs don't do anything except penalize the American consumer and reshuffle global trade. But it doesn't reshuffle global trade in the way that Donald Trump thinks it does. All he's doing is changing the countries who receive those imports. For every bag of coffee that the United States doesn't buy, it goes to a country like China or to South Africa or to any other country that is a part of the Fuck America coalition. Quote, we're already experiencing a limited impact, but it dropped further with the exemption, said Luisa Penice, an economist at XP, who halved her forecast for the tariff impact on Brazil's GDP this year to 0.15 percentage points. Goldman Sachs maintained its projection for Brazil's economy to grow 2.3% this year in light of the quote-unquote notable exemptions, adding that the government support for affected sectors expected in coming days should soften the economic blow. Quote, Brazil depends on the United States, that's true, but also on BRICS countries, Europe, and Mercosur. Mercosur is a Latin American economic partnership. Planning Minister Simone Tebet said at a public event last week, referring to a major developing nation such as China, India, Russia, and a South American trade bloc. BRICS is the Fuck America economic group. Over the last 80 years, America has done tremendous harm by destabilizing virtually the entire planet. Not only have they destabilized the entire planet, but the American government has made themselves a lot of enemies, or even if not a lot of enemies, countries that are skeptical to work with the United States because they are such a wild partner, especially nowadays with Donald Trump at the helm. Being associated with the United States means being associated with instability. And developing nations with developing economies need as little instability as possible. As a result of this, they are looking towards China as their major trading partner now. And China has the population base to absorb all of these goods at the same rate or more than the United States. That leaves the United States holding its fucking dick in its hand with a thumb up its ass and no trading partners because you've alienated yourself from the global economy. She said almost half of Brazil's agribusiness trade, an engine for Brazil's economy in the recent years, is concentrated in Asia compared to just 10% with the United States. Latin America has more firsthand experience with this than probably any other section, than any other region on the globe when it comes to meddling, destabilization, colonialism, economic colonialism. Every country in Central and South America has been fucked over repeatedly by the United States. They, more than anyone else, do not want to do business with the United States, which is why they already don't really do that much business with the United States. And countries that do, I'm excluding Mexico in this instance because they are a part of NAFTA, but the countries that do business with the United States have been doing so recently to get in Donald Trump's good graces. Quote, when it comes to industry, the ratio is 4-1, 4 times more to Asia than to the United States, she added. Brazil is far less open to trade than most major global economies, limiting fallout from major trade disruptions. Exports and imports amounted to 36% of its GDP last year, less than half the share in Mexico and nearby Paraguay, and just a quarter of the level in trade-focused Asian economies such as Thailand and Malaysia, according to World Bank data. Much of Brazil's exports are commodities easily redirected to different markets over time, said Tiago Carlos, a PIMCO portfolio manager for emerging markets. In the short term, more domestic food supply may even help to bring down inflation. We saw this when Donald Trump struck an agreement with Japan for them to get like 75% more rice. Japan buys the rice from the United States. They stop buying from, we'll use China because I don't know who they're getting their fucking rice from. China just finds another country to take on that rice. All you did was change where the rice is going. You didn't adjust the trade deficit by anything. With inflation likely to trend lower, the central bank may find more room to begin easing monetary policy sooner than expected, said Carlos, noting the benchmark rate at the current level of 15% keeps monetary policy extremely tight, dragging on growth. Analysts polled by Reuters estimated that even without a U.S. trade deal and before exemptions, Brazil's growth outlook for 2026 would remain virtually unchanged from their consensus of 1.6 to 1.7%. Still, Luis Leal, chief economist at asset manager G5 Partners, warned of potential knock-on effects if government aid is not well targeted to protect vulnerable sectors and jobs. Exemptions applied to nearly 700 products, and Brazil exports about 4,000 different goods to the United States, said Leal. A large number of firms that sell to the United States were not covered. Brazil's central bank said on Monday that U.S. levies on Brazilian goods could have, quote, significant effects on specific sectors, but broader macroeconomic effects are uncertain and will depend on negotiations and market risk perceptions. Flavio Ataliba, a researcher at Brazil University FGV, noted the country's vast regional variety will result in uneven impacts. The Northeast region in particular could be hit harder due to its export base of low value-added, labor-intensive goods such as fruit, seafood, textiles, and footwear, all now subject to a full 50% tariff. In that instance, that government aid that they're talking about needs to be redistributed to the people who are most affected to it, and to the companies that are most affected by it. I mentioned coffee specifically. I thought when I originally picked that article, I was hoping that it focused more on coffee, but it didn't, and so I just went and I found what I was looking for. This is courtesy of Republicans against Trump. Brazil is the largest exporter of coffee to the United States. That 50% tariff applies to coffee. Now, this goes a little bit deeper. I myself, and I'm sure many of you will be personally affected by higher cups of coffee. I typically drink 2 cups of coffee a day. Not recently, since I've been taking medication and I've been insomniac. I've had insomnia after too much caffeine. But typically, I'm a 2 cups of coffee a day guy. I love coffee. specifically Arabica coffee. Why am I mentioning Arabica coffee? Well, Arabica coffee is the primary bean that Brazil exports. It also happens to be the bean found in most coffees, in most packaged coffees. It is the most accessible coffee bean. It is the most consumer-friendly coffee bean. Dunkin' uses Arabica coffee beans. Starbucks uses Arabica coffee beans. Your favorite store, their store brand probably uses Arabica. Just next time you go to the supermarket, look at how many coffee brands use Arabica beans. That shit is going to become 50% more expensive. Probably even more. I saw online people were looking at like $15 for a pound of coffee. It is probably going to be something like that, especially if you do drink Starbucks coffee or you prefer like a designer coffee bean. Even still, your store brand is going to get higher. It's going to go from maybe like $8 to $12 or from $7 to $10. It's going to be a tremendous increase. Where then we then have these targeted tariffs at India, which amounts to like 50 fucking percent.
With less than 30 hours to go until his new global tariffs go into effect, President Trump warning he may raise tariffs still farther on key trade partner India, already facing a 25% import tax. That threat coming in a wide-ranging phone interview on CNBC.
But I think I'm going to raise that very substantially over the next 24 hours because they're buying Russian oil, they're fueling the war machine, and if they're going to do that, then I'm not going to be happy.
Trump.
The only reason I maintain optimism about these tariffs is because they aren't, like, I don't know if legally binding is the phrase, but they're not law. Him just saying this on a phone call, him tweeting about this, doesn't mean that this tariff is actually going to become a thing. However, that doesn't mean that there's no impact. One, it causes the markets to be unstable, but I don't give a fuck about the markets. What I care about is that it gives corporations the ability to raise their prices preemptively because of all of the hysteria.
Policy uncertainty now affecting disparate parts of the U.S. economy.
Tariffs again did take a bite out of this.
Heavy equipment
I totally missed the part. Okay,
Caterpillar
so he said, I totally missed the oil part. This tracks back to 80 years of destabilization. These countries have no reason to even give a fuck about what the United States says to them because the United States does not bring anything to the table. And Trump is doubly mad because he said he was going to end the war in Ukraine on day one. He didn't. It's now August, and there's still fighting going on. And he can no longer squeeze Russia through sanctions because they're opened up to other economies, whether it be China, Iran, or India.
Investors, tariffs could cost their bottom line $1.5 billion this year. Hotel giant Marriott noting a drop.
In a normal instance, I would be cheering on a corporation having $1.5 billion in profit wiped from their books, but not in this instance, because in my perfect world, in my Marxist utopia, that $1.5 billion is being redistributed to the workers, to the laborers who helped generate that profit. This does not benefit anybody. Not only are the workers not seeing bonuses, not only are the workers not receiving any of that profit, the prices of shit are going to continue to go up.
Drop in demand from government travel and international visitors to the U.S. And a new AP poll shows more than half of Americans consider the cost of groceries to be a major source of stress. Trump allies facing...
That's a fucking insane amount. I just posted a short the other day about how I assess whether or not the economy is good, because these dipshits on Fox News were talking about just how great the Trump economy is doing. And one of the ways I look at it is if you're a part of the 90% or the 99%, if you're a middle income person or a lower income person, you're not going to think the economy is good if you can't afford shit. If your wages are stagnant, your pay is ass, and you can't afford to go to the fucking grocery store. That's what I'm talking about, dude. This is what the fuck I mean. I go shopping for me and my wife it's at least $120. Every fucking week, it's at least $120. Fortunately, we can afford that expense. Some people can't. That's the reality of the situation. And again, it's just the two of us. We don't have children. I don't understand how the fuck you can afford to feed a family of 4 or 5 if you're a low-income person right now. It's fucking insane.
Frustration over the state of the economy.
Why does it seem like when you make your voting decisions, they're based on capital rather than the working class?
Nebraska Republican Congressman Mike Flood blasted with jeers at a town hall last night for saying this.
This guy has a humiliation fetish. He's the only Republican consistently doing town halls, and he is consistently getting his ass eaten by his constituents.
Respect, sir. The Republican Party, now more than ever, represents the heart and soul of the working class.
All this as the president is still being hit with questions over Friday's weak jobs numbers for the past 3 months and his decision to fire the head of the federal agency responsible for reporting them, claiming without evidence that the numbers were politically manipulated.
It's a highly political situation. It's totally rigged. Smart people know it.
All right, Garrett, let's turn to another headline I know you have tonight. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff.
The smart people know that this is rigged. The smart people, they know a scam when they see it, which is why they've all been buying the Trump shoes and the Trump phone and the soon-to-be Trump pocket pussy. Yes, folks, I am molding my pussy for sale. It is going to be on whitehouse.gov for $17.76.
We'll meet with Russian leaders in Moscow tomorrow.
Yeah, Tom, those meetings come ahead of President Trump's Friday deadline for Russia to reach a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, or the president says be subject to so-called secondary tariffs meant to punish Russia's trading partners like China and India and isolate them further from the global economy.
Is secondary tariff an original word? Hang on. What does Google AI overview have to say about secondary tariff? Oh my God. Dude. Wikipedia. There's a Wikipedia entry. Unlike primary tariffs, secondary tariffs penalize the third-party countries or entities that trade with the target nation. Is that not just an additional primary tariff? What's a tertiary tariff? When's he going to invent that? Is that when, like, you penalize the neighboring country of a country that is doing business with an already tariffed country? What is happening? What is happening? I don't mean to deflect from the show a little bit, but I've been, engaged in politics actively since like 2017, and never before have I said what is happening so many times. It just almost, it seems like 2020 we all did die, and this is hell, because every fucking day there's just like, there's crazy shit going on, there's horrible shit going on, and then there's just like ridiculous shit going on, like Donald Trump talking about secondary tariffs. Bro, you're just making shit up at this point.